do today is we visit Nepal through the PowerPoint presentation and come back to Manila and see what we can learn from Nepal and improve how we plan for the earthquake in Metro Manila. What happened in Nepal? As you know, Nepal is a country prone to earthquakes as well, like the Philippines. And as mentioned by Fuad, last April 25, magnitude 7.8 earthquake occurred 80 kilometers northwest of Kathmandu. And there have been many big earthquakes in Nepal, so people would know that a large earthquake would devastate capital and the surrounding province. In 1934, a magnitude 8 earthquake killed so many people in the area. Why is Nepal an earthquake-prone country? Before Nepal, before the Himalayas mountain range, before Tibet, and before India connected with Asia and attached to Asia, there was a big ocean called Death Sea separating Asia. And the subcontinent of India collided with Asia to form the Himalayas mountain range and the Mount Everest. So the continuing building of the mountain is manifested by earthquakes due to fault movement where the Indian subcontinent is actually diving beneath Asia. This is now the cause of the large magnitude earthquake last April 25. The epicenter was there, the affected area is around here, and this shaking was felt all over the Indian subcontinent, including India, Bangladesh, and Tibet. Please note that the earthquake happened just before noon. This is 6 o'clock, 11 minutes UTC, so you had around 5 hours plus. So essentially, noon time, and it was Saturday. So the event would have been different if the earthquake occurred in the evening and weekday. Okay? So we'll visit that. The earthquake was so shallow. What is important that we need to find out or learn from this is that prior to the earthquake, there were geoscientists explaining to scientists in Nepal that where the earthquake happened, there was a gap, and the last earthquake from this gap occurred in 1344, based on Regiment dating and other data. And they, in the paper that they published, in the geophysical letters, the recurrence interval of movement of that segment is still 750 years, plus or minus 100 years. So essentially, you add 700, that's this time already. Okay? So the area is due for an earthquake, and they have been planning for an earthquake, but the earthquake happened. I have been saying, or FIMOS and other scientists have been saying, that the West Valley Fault traversing Metro Manila is also ready to go. We don't know when. So what we need to do is act right away. Okay. This is the collision of India and Asia, producing many faults. But the fault movement in that earthquake would be the thrust fault, where the Asian subcontinent is moving up over the Indian subcontinent, which is diving down. What is the ground shaking intensity as a result of that magnitude 7.8 earthquake? The epicenter is here, but please note that away from the epicenter, the yellow color, which would be from intensity 6 to orange, which is intensity 8, would be more to the east or more to the right of the epicenter, meaning the rupture of the fault propagated towards the southeast. Note also that the intensity maximum near Kathmandu would be 8, and typically in the epicentral area of major earthquakes, the intensity is 8. Very severe shaking where you cannot stand anymore. I will show to you the maps that we have prepared for Metro Manila. The intensity will also be intensity 8. Let me show you the aftershock distribution of the earthquake. This is the main shock. And the aftershocks that followed were more towards the east. 27 hours after, with magnitude 4 or greater. That would mean that the aftershock distribution would tell us that the propagation of the rupture of the fault started from the epicenter towards the southeast, towards Kathmandu. So if we look at the studies made by other scientists, and I would like to recognize that many of my sources will be the IRIS organization. This is the epicenter. The arrows point to you how the block moved relative to the Indian subcontinent. So essentially, Asia is moving up towards the south relative to India. And the number of minutes, the numbers there indicate the number of seconds where which would indicate the rupture affected that area. So the rupture was almost around 60 seconds or 1 minute. That is why when we conduct a drill, we always say, assume a 1 minute shaking. The 1990 Luzon earthquake was also magnitude 7.8, but the rupture process was around 45 seconds. So very close, not 1 minute. So you will see that there are also different colors. The colors would represent the slip displacement in meters along the fault plane, and the highest slip would be just north of Kathmandu, the yellow color. Okay? So the rupture propagated towards the southeast for 1 minute, and you will see that the maximum displacement was towards Kathmandu. That's why we have a lot of damage also there. The other reason why Kathmandu was badly damaged is that Kathmandu is a former lake. The boundary of the lake would be the Himalayas mountain range, and the shape of the basement of the former lake would be like this. And it is filled up by 100 to 300 meters of sediment. And as you know, sediments, when shaken, would amplify the shaking felt at the basement, which are rocks, and would cause more damage to structures on top of it. Please note that Metro Manila is also underlain by thick sediments. Not as thick as Kathmandu Valley, but we are also underlain by sediments along the Marikina Valley and along the coastal areas of Metro Manila. Second, because of the presence of the valley, where the base of the lake is a rock, then sometimes during the shaking along the rock cannot get out because it's struck. So therefore, there will be reflection of the wave, making sure that the shaking will be amplified within the valley. So therefore, Kathmandu is really an area at high risk of strong ground shaking. What happened? There were many buildings that collapsed. Private buildings, even religious and historical structures like this. Okay? And even in areas where you least expect death to happen, but you know that during a strong earthquake, I always say, I read it in the newspaper, strong earthquakes are better than a well-financed political campaign. They always ensure landslide. and so therefore, landslides and avalanches cause death, like in the Mount Everest area. Roads were also fissured, so mobility across some parts of Nepal were hampered because of the fissuring of the ground due to the shaking or liquefaction, and also roads being blocked during landslide debris. So in summary, what are the impacts of the magnitude 7.8 earthquake as of 12 May, according to the Center for Disaster Management and Risk Reduction Technology, based in Karlsruhe University in Germany. The summary states that well-built structures receive slight damage. So if our structures are well-built, we can enjoy the shaking, and after the earthquake, we're still alive. Older buildings suffer great damage, and the ground shaking in the epicentral area corresponds to intensity 8. That is the same intensity as what we will have in Metro Manila, given a magnitude 7.2 earthquake. Around 300,000 buildings were destroyed, 250,000 got damaged, and I think it will increase as more reports will come from the isolated areas. Many landslides blocked roads and caused infrastructure damage, and was also limited liquefaction. Liquefaction is essentially a phenomenon where soft ground behaves like liquid or like a quicksand during shaking. The death toll is more than 8,000, 377 in Nepal, and around 100 fatalities in Tibet and India, where also advantages were important. Note that at the time of the earthquake, before noon, Saturday, where many people were outside. It would be a big difference if the earthquake happened in the evening and a weekday. Okay? But let us put this into context in our scenario for Metro Manila. The death toll in Kathmandu was less than estimated because there were estimates of around 40,000 deaths for the earthquake. Maybe the epicenter is not so close to Kathmandu such that the shaking is not too strong yet. Not too strong yet. But there were many reasons. One would be in rural areas, because the earthquake was not that strong yet during the initial shaking, they were able to get out. Second, the buildings Although made up of bricks and very light roofing materials, so when it collapses on them, I think they will not die right away. Okay? And I think the search and rescue are a little bit okay. But the more important thing is the time of courage. It was daytime, there was no rain, because if there was rain, then it would be more difficult. And there were many people outside. And I've lifted a graph out of that report showing the following. If the earthquake would have happened between the daytime, then people will be outside of their houses, and they will be out in the field maybe. But the problem will be for the schools. School children will be in school buildings, so if the school buildings are not that good, many children would have died. Okay? Also for non-residential buildings, like commercial buildings, they would have been in the residential buildings during the day. So, let us remember that when we revisit the Metro Manila scenario. If the commercial building is okay, then people will be safe. And if the earthquake occurs in the daytime, we will have lesser number of casualties. Okay? So, that is Nepal. Let's come back to the Philippines. What is the scenario for Metro Manila? As you know, the Philippines is prone to many earthquakes, and only Palawan Island will not be shaken severely. Now, small earthquakes are okay, but not strong ones, because strong earthquakes can cause collapses of houses and buildings and fissure roads. The last major earthquake that happened in Metro Manila would be the 1968 Ruby Tower earthquake, which was of magnitude 7.3. But the earthquake happened 230 kilometers northeast of Manila, very far from Manila, so we should not expect casualties as a result of that. However, during that time, we didn't have any building code yet. The building code was formulated in 1972. 268 people died. What is the lesson? We don't need a fault beneath a community for that community to be affected by an earthquake. We need a strong shaking and weak buildings. There have been many earthquakes in the past that affected Manila, and most of these were originated outside of Manila. But the main problem that we have, just like in Nepal, is that an active fault traverses eastern Metro Manila. Likewise, other parts of Bulacan, Rizal, Cavite, and Laguna, and that is the Valley Fault System. The Valley Fault System has been studied by FEMOX and USGS. Unlike Nepal earthquake, which was caused by the thrust faulting with a lot of vertical component, this one would be a horizontal type of movement. For the past 1,400 years, this fault has moved 4 times, with around magnitude 7 to 6.5 or 6 earthquakes. And the interval of movement of this fault is roughly 400 to 600 years ago. That one in Nepal was 750 plus or minus 100 years. So it was also due for them. Now, 400 years ago, let's use that as a lower limit. The last earthquake from this fault occurred in 1658, 357 years ago. Of course, nature or faults do not follow averages. It can move a little bit earlier, or it can move a little bit later. So if we allow for the tens of years or 100 years of fault that it can move, then maybe in our lifetime this fault can move. Okay? So we need to prepare for this. What would be the scenario? In 2004, FEMOX, JICA, and MDA released a scenario of a magnitude 7.2 earthquake with at least a minimum of intensity 8 shaking in Metro Manila and surrounding provinces. In 2013, FEMOX and New South Australia produced the result of another project called Risk Analysis Project, and we added another scenario, which is 6.5. 6.5 earthquakes, of course, are more easy to achieve than 7.2. But what we wanted to find out would be what will happen to Metro Manila if it's 7.2 or 6.5. Okay? Please note that the yellow colors there would be intensity 8, with some grounds as high intensity 8. In the 7.2 scenario, that brown-colored areas are underlain by thick sediments, just like Kathmandu Valley. Okay? And the green ones would be intensity 7. We expect severe damage in the yellow ones, not severe in intensity 7. Those living in intensity 7 color areas would be able to respond to Metro Manila. If it's 6.5, the yellow colored area coverage is much less. Okay, so we expect less damage, less casualties. What is intensity 8 shaking? Many of you have not felt an intensity 8 shaking yet. So my question is, do you want to experience this? Only in the simulation. Okay? So in this simulation, you will see that those people in Japan, actual one. I'm just simulating the possible earthquake in Metro Manila. So let's use this actual clip of the 1995 global earthquake to mimic the possible events in Manila. And you will see that they were not able to stand and things began to fall. Okay? Okay, that is intensity 8 shaking. The building did not fall down. It's good, but things might fall down on you. So our goal is to make earthquake-resistant buildings, and things will not fall on you, so you live after the major shaking. You also see that people cannot stand. That's why we say drop over and hold. You hide beneath a study table and you hold the table. If you don't hold the legs of the table will divorce you, even though divorce is not permitted yet in the Philippines. Okay, what is the casualty estimate? We estimated, or the impact estimate, residential buildings out of the JICA FIMOX MMDA study, 13% the residential buildings will be heavily damaged or collapsed. Public buildings 10%, medium-rise buildings 11%, while the very high-rise buildings only 2% heavily damaged or collapsed. If the earthquake happens in the evening, 33,500 will die. More than 100,000 injured. And we don't have a bed capacity of more than that. We only have roughly 40,000 bed capacity. And fire can also happen. In the new study, we validated for a magnitude 7.2 earthquake that around 31,000 will die. Very consistent. But the cost of replacing damaged houses and buildings would be 2.3 trillion pesos. That's a lot. It's 1 year budget of all of us in government. However, if the 7.2 is not realized but only 6.5, we would have expected that the casualty will be very, very small. No, it's still 23,000. And the cost of replacing these damaged buildings and structures would be 1.8 trillion pesos. Still a lot. The bottom line is, we need to make sure that we lessen the number of houses and buildings that will collapse or get damaged. Okay, just to make sure that as a response to the earthquake, there might be mobility problems. There is liquefaction hazard in Metro Manila, where roads can be fissured, bridges can subside, and debris might block the roads. Even water pipes and gasoline tanks might be uplifted and will get destroyed. And so, if you plan for an earthquake response to Metro Manila, you need to consider that there are areas underlain by thick sediments that are liquefaction prone, and those are in the red zone. Okay? So you cannot go out of these zones right away using your 4 wheels. A major hazard related to earthquake is fire. So we need to make sure that we prepare for this as well. We don't need a lot of fire trucks, because there will be at least 100 points where fire can start. What we need is to prevent fire to start. Okay? Not buy a lot of fire trucks. Tell people how to prevent fire. Before I forget that there's another scenario, or before you forget that there's another scenario for Metro Manila, of an earthquake not inland but offshore from the Manila Trench, that scenario is used for a tsunami preparedness for Metro Manila. You know, Manila Bay has been affected twice already by a tsunami in the 1800s. That's why we call Manila Bay as Bay over troubled waters for a tsunami. You're very serious. And if we simulate the possibility of a tsunami, then we think that with a magnitude 8.3 earthquake, the height of the tsunami along the political Manila coastline is 3.5 meters if the sea level is normal, and plus 2 meters if it's high tide, 5.5 meters almost 2 floors. And if we allow the water to go inland, we will see that the red zone will be the inundated zone in Metro Manila for tsunami that will be between 2 to 3 kilometers away from the shoreline. So, ladies and gentlemen, we need to make sure that we prepare Metro Manila, and JICA FIMOX MMDA study has indicated what we need to do. Okay, and so just to visit that, and we'll discuss that this morning. But let me just remind you of the important things that you need to take out of my talk. Metro Manila and surrounding provinces, Bulacan, Rizal, Cavite, and Laguna, are prone to earthquakes, and some of those coastlines, those provinces, to tsunami. And for Metro Manila, we use the West Valley Fault as the scenario that can cause severe damage to Manila, and the Manila Trench as the scenario that can cause tsunamis along the coast of Manila Bay. Disaster risk reduction and management efforts anywhere in the world must use appropriate science-based information and scenario. We need to learn from what happened in Nepal. Scientists there have indicated that that segment of the faulted moon, last April 25, was due for an earthquake. And they were planning to prepare, but they were not able to practice what they planned. So therefore, in Metro Manila, we have been discussing about this scenario. We have plans. We need to improve the plans, but most importantly, we need to act now. So I'd like everyone to act now. We should have acted years ago. Thank you very much.